Hello and welcome back to the Joyful Soul Creates. Charlotte here, and today I'm sharing an inside pop-up card created with some of the images from the Stampers' Delights Kawaii new release, which is releasing today. This inside pop-up card idea is inspired by a video Jennifer Maguire did some time ago, and I will link to that in the description box below. I'm going to start out with colouring my images. These are digital images that I have arranged together into a little scene. So I have two of the birds, the house and the branch, and I just arranged them in Word into an arrangement I would be happy with, printed it out, and then I'm just colouring it in with my Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers. And as this is not really the feature of this video, I'm going to go through the colouring quite quickly for the most part. I'm using a variety of earth browns to colour the branch and some of the areas of the house, and I did go over the lines a bit, so I used my blend pen to neaten that up. For the, shall we say, the body of the house, I used TNs, and I noticed weirdly that my TN4, the lids on either end, are completely different colours. Not quite sure why, but that is another reason, as I've spoken about before, why it's so important to swatch out your colours, because you can't always tell based on the lids what the colours are. I'm going to slow the colouring down a bit now because I'm going to just talk a little bit about how I added detail to the house to make it look more like wood. So I have a very sharp brown colouring pencil, and I'm using my T-square ruler to just draw in some lines and make it look like planks of wood. And then I'm going to use first the lighter brown, but then I do also go back in with that darker brown that I'd used for the lines again. And I'm just making kind of scribbly lines up and down each plank just to add the grain of the wood and make it look more realistic. This doesn't have to be perfect because wood is not perfect. In nature it's going to have all kind of knots and imperfections, so just scribbly lines work really well for this. So with that done, I'm going to go back to colouring the image. Having finished all the wood parts, I decided to do the flowers next. I'm doing them in pinks, and I do give them grey centres. As you saw from the title screen, no doubt, there were a lot of mistakes in the course of making this video. When I tried to get that grey for colouring the centres of the flowers, I managed to knock my marker storage over. My markers are stored in like plastic shelves that stack on top of each other. Well, my cat was in the way, and reaching over him to take a pen, I managed to knock the whole thing over, and the top half of the shelves flew off and went back behind the table, behind the radiator, and I had to stop and go and rescue all of those. Luckily, I did manage to find them all without having to completely rearrange my craft area, so that was good. But that was the first of many stresses in the course of making this card. Here again I've slowed down because I decided to add those wooden boards to the centre of the big heart on the house. And I also decided to add just a little pencil detail onto the roof and the base of the house as well. Once I'd finished all the colouring, I started fussy cutting it out. And here's another stressful situation, shall we say, with this card, because as beautiful as this branch is, it's really not easy to cut around. I do wish I had a scan and cut, especially when cutting things like this. Normally I don't mind fussy cutting, but there was a point along the course of this that I was kind of regretting my decisions. But I got there in the end. I only show cutting with my scissors here, and I have talked before about how you want to move the paper, not the scissors. But I did off screen because this took me so long. I did use my craft knife as well to help with some of the nooks and crannies. And also you will see I left some of the white card along the end because the original plan, which ended up changing, was that white end would be for my pop-up mechanism. Here is the aperture I cut in my card just with a circle die because I want obviously to see through to the scene inside. So I created this window just with a circle die, and then I worked out where I want to add my clouds. Initially I was going to do them just so they're only behind that circle, but I actually ended up covering the whole of the inside of the card with the clouds. And as it's very pale, I just use spun sugar. The pale pink is easy enough to write over, although of course when you're writing the card you'll want to make sure that you're writing does not show through the window, so of course you need to be starting any writing far enough down that it's not going to show through. I'm using an MFT stencil to create my cloud background, and as always, all the links to all the products I have used will be in the description box down below, and like I said, don't forget these images are for a new release, so be sure to hop on over and check those out. There are other images in the release as well that you might want to have a look at. Once I've finished the clouds all the way to the bottom, I do also like to add a little of the colour down at the bottom as well. And then I'm going to move on to creating my pop-up mechanism, which again was very stressful. So I'm marking I need to trim that white bit down a bit, and I'm just going to use my craft knife for this. And then I put it into the channel of my paper cutter to score the end, but I should have been paying attention to the position of the house because I want the house to be flat. I want it to be level when it's in the scene, and to get that to work I would have needed to score it with the house level, but I didn't do that, so I ended up having to cut that little piece off, and then I thought, okay, I'll use some acetate. This will also help make the branch a bit sturdier because in some places where it's narrow it's not the sturdiest. So I found a snippet of acetate which I thought would work, and folded that and positioned it into place on my card after some fiddling to decide exactly where I wanted it. I used a mix of tape and Glossy Accents to try and make sure it would be nice and sticky and hold well. Except I think again I managed to score it so it was going to be at an angle, and I thought it would be easiest to stick it down first and then work out how to attach my house, and this just was not working at all. So I ended up taking this snippet off. I decided it was way too short anyway. I did try using some masking tape to hold the image on and let me try and work out positioning and so on and so forth, but yeah, in the end it wasn't working at all, so I took that piece of acetate off, and then my camera died and I didn't realise, so I can't actually show you how I made the mechanism, which is why I've left this bit in, because it's basically the same thing but without it all going quite so wrong. So I used a longer piece of acetate, not a snippet. I cut myself a new piece, customly sized so it would be correct. Actually I could have cut it a bit longer than I did in the end, but that's fine. And I attached it to the back of the branch and the back of the house and so on. And I folded it as I did with that first piece so it would fit into the card front, and then I also folded the end near the open edge of the card. I folded it under twice, so at 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch from the end, so it has the same amount of lift as the inner edge, but is nice and secure to the card base on that edge as well, which just makes it a bit sturdier. For some reason, despite using the glossy accent and the tape, it did not want to stick down, it just kept coming back up. And then I put too much glossy accents on, so I had to dab it off with a piece of paper so as not to make a mess. And I ended up just leaving an acrylic block on it for ages to help it hold down, and eventually it stuck into place. I'm still being very careful opening it here when I'm showing you the finished card, just because I was still concerned that it's not quite stuck, but now it's a day later and it should be stuck by now, so hopefully it's fine. As I said, this was inspired by Jennifer Maguire's card, and she always does things so much better, so do check out her video below if you want to see that. There's also the links to all the products and my blog post down below. You can follow me on social media, subscribe if you want to see more videos, and there's a couple of videos on screen if you want to see more straight away. Otherwise, I'll thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!